All right, so that is essentially the task which is ahead of Arun Jaitley as he steps up to present the budget today. What is going to be in that brown bag which Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will, when he carries it into the Parliament? And to discuss more as to what is to be expected in terms of the budget, what does the industry expect, and will this, of course, propel growth, or will this be a populist budget, because this is the last final budget, full final budget which the government will be presenting ahead of the general elections next year. We are joined in by Jim Rogers, who is an American investor who is joining us live from Singapore. Jim, good morning to you. This of course is a budget that is being watched very closely, not just in India but also abroad, in terms of how good a destination India is in terms of making investments. So what do you think are the big expectations of foreign investors ahead of this budget?
Well, you have to ask the other foreign investors, but I'll tell you, throughout history, every government in every country, when there's an election, does everything it can that gets votes. It will do things for the farmers and the young people and the old people and the infrastructure. It will do something for everybody, and anybody who gets left out, we'll call them up and say, oh, what about us? And they will get something too. Not good. It's not good, but it's the way the world is.
Absolutely. And the thing is, now India and China are competing for foreign direct investment. Now, both of these are very large economies which are growing at a healthy rate, and the rest of the world is not exactly as upbeat as India and China are. So what do you think India is going to be setting itself apart as, especially in terms of transparency? Do you think that India's growth story is now more exciting than that of China? And India also has a very large English-speaking talent pool, while China continues to age. Do you think that is something which is going to set India apart for the investors? And is there something which probably the investors are looking at in this budget?
Well, the English advantage is certainly great for India, and it has been for a long time. It has not prevented China getting ahead of you, though, as you well know. I prefer to invest in China right now rather than India, mainly because the Indian stock market is at all-time highs and the Chinese stock market is down 40%. So at the moment, I prefer China to India. But India is a wonderful, wonderful place. I tell people all the time that if you can only visit one country in your life, you should visit India. There's nothing like it.
You know, it's an interesting fact that you say that the Indian market is at an all-time high and you'd invest in China because it is down 40%. Now, China's market obviously is bigger than that of India, but the question which a lot of people are, of course, pondering upon is, in a long-term perspective in mind, why would the foreign companies be willing to accept humiliating terms and conditions to do business in China? Because clearly, democracy and economy are perhaps not the best of friends then, if that is what many of the investors are likely to do by investing in China.
Well, I will have to say to you that most people I know, you say that there are problems in China, and of course there are. There are problems everywhere, but most people will tell you it's easier to do business in China than it is to do business in India. I mean, Walmart, which is the largest American retailer, has hundreds of stores in China because it's so easy to do business there. You know the situation in India better than I do.
That is true. When you talk of the stock markets, yes, Indian market is at an all-time high, but that pertains fundamentally to the FIIs, that is the foreign institutional investors. But what do you think in terms of foreign direct investment, which is more long-term, which is more about creating infrastructure in a country? So what is the one step that you think the Finance Minister of India must perhaps announce in the budget to woo the foreign investors to try bring them into India? Because FDI in retail has already been opened up. Is there something else that you're looking at?
He's got to make the markets open and convertible. I mean, the currency is not convertible. The stock market's not convertible. The currency market, the commodities markets, everything is closed. If he opens them up, I assure you, some money will leave India, but much more money will come into India, foreign money.
Right. Now, that's an interesting suggestion. And also the Indian Prime Minister, Jim, is focusing on what has now been termed, of course, as the flagship project of the present government, Make in India. So are companies willing and ready for technology transfers? Because this, of course, has been one of the big sticking points, especially when Indian companies are trying to get into big alliances in terms of especially getting technological transfer. That has been a sticking point. Do you think that's likely to happen sometime soon?
I hope India will do it. As you know, China now is becoming the leader in the world, including ahead of America in many parts of technology. China produces 10 times as many engineers every year as America does. Some of them are bad engineers, but some of them are good. India has good education for some people. It just needs more education and needs to open its markets. I mean, I love India, but I don't like what your politicians do.
Right, that's an interesting point that you make. And also, make in India versus America first. What's your take on that?
Well, now that America is cutting taxes and giving incentives and getting rid of regulations, at the moment anyway, America probably has an advantage. It's still very difficult to do business in India, as you well know, and America, Mr. Trump says, and we hope he is, making it much easier to do business in America, and he's cutting taxes.
Right, we'll have to leave it there. Jim Rogers, thank you very much indeed for having joined us from Singapore and having given us your perspective as to what India needs to do at this point of time. There is a lot of excitement in terms of what India is, of course, planning in terms of Make in India. But yes, there are a few sticking points, and it remains to be seen whether Finance Minister Arun Jaitley addresses them in the budget today.